On a humid August morning in 1847, something occurred at Ryan's Mart in Charleston, South Carolina, an event that would become the most whispered about scandal in all of Carleton County for the next 60 years. A planter named Samuel Rutledge paid just $5, the lowest bid ever recorded in that auction house. For a woman the auctioneer had described as unmarketable for any purpose but field labor. Within only 18 months, that same woman would become the most sought-after figure across 3 counties. Her presence at Rutledge's plantation sparked dozens of unexplained visits from Charleston's most prominent men. By 1850, 7 wealthy planters had made formal offers to purchase her, each one mysteriously rejected. The strangest part? No one could agree on what she actually looked like. Some claimed she was disfigured beyond recognition. Others swore she was the most beautiful woman they had ever seen. When Samuel Rutledge died under suspicious circumstances in 1851, the woman vanished that very night, and the truth behind what happened at Magnolia Bend Plantation was buried so completely that even county records from that period later disappeared from 3 separate archives. What you're about to hear has been reconstructed from private journals, letters found in attic trunks, and testimony given in sealed court proceedings, documents that were never meant to see daylight. Before we continue with the story of the woman known only as Number 39, take a moment to make sure you're subscribed to Liturgy of Fear so you never miss another dark mystery from America's hidden past. Hit that notification bell and leave a comment telling us what state or city you're listening from. We love hearing where our audience uncovers these forgotten stories. Now, let's return to Charleston, South Carolina, in the summer of 1847, to the day an auction that should have lasted 30 seconds ended up changing lives and destroying reputations for decades to come. By the mid-1840s, Charleston's auction houses had witnessed every kind of human transaction imaginable. Ryan's Mart, located between Chalmers and Queen Streets, processed hundreds of sales each month. Men, women, and children displayed in its high-walled courtyard before crowds of planters, factors, and speculators. The building itself was unremarkable. Whitewashed brick walls that trapped the heavy summer heat, a raised platform where the auctioneer conducted business, and narrow back rooms where people waited in chains for their turn under the crowd's cold scrutiny. The smell of sweat, fear, and Charleston sulphurous harbor air blended into something so thick that regular attendees learned to ignore it, though visitors from the north often had to step outside to breathe. Carleton County, where Samuel Rutledge maintained his plantation, stretched inland along the Edisto River, a landscape of rice fields, pine forests, and grand estates whose names appeared on maps like territorial claims: Whitehall, Fenwick Hall, Milton Place. By 1847, the county's economy revolved entirely around rice and cotton, crops that demanded enormous labor and built vast fortunes for those who managed their operations efficiently. The wealthy families, Ravenels, Hoogies, Pellets, Gettys, formed an interconnected web of marriages, business partnerships, and social ties that dictated everything from church pews to political appointments. Samuel Rutledge stood awkwardly within that hierarchy. At 43, he owned Magnolia Bend, a middling plantation of 800 acres, with 42 enslaved workers and debts that grew each year despite decent harvests. His wife, Catherine, had died in 1844 during a yellow fever outbreak, leaving him with 2 daughters, Louisa, 17, and Margaret, 14, whose marriage prospects now required careful attention. Samuel was known for his strict frugality, a quality that earned respect but little affection. He rarely attended Charleston's social gatherings, preferring the company of his account books and agricultural journals. His overseer, William Pryo, was a thick-necked man whose efficiency bordered on cruelty, a trait Samuel neither encouraged nor condemned. The summer of 1847 was particularly brutal. Temperatures climbed above 90 degrees day after day, and the rice fields bred mosquitoes in swarms that made evening walks unbearable. Samuel's finances had worsened over the winter when a shipping delay forced him to sell his cotton crop at depressed prices. He needed workers. 2 field hands had died of pneumonia that spring, leaving his workforce too thin to manage the next planting season. But he couldn't afford the going rate for healthy young men. Prices often exceeded $1,000. So, in August, he traveled to Charleston with just $50 in hand, hoping to find older laborers or those with minor disabilities who could still contribute to his plantation's upkeep. The auction on August 12th began at 10 in the morning. Samuel arrived early, standing in the shade of the mart's eastern wall, while studying a handbill listing that day's offerings. 23 people would be sold, ranging from a skilled blacksmith expected to fetch $1,500 to several children whose word depended on whether they were purchased with their mothers. Samuel's eyes lingered on the older listings. A man of 50 with a hernia, a woman of 45 described as reliable for housework despite a limp. These were the people no one else wanted, and possibly the ones he could afford. The auctioneer, Thomas Gadsden, had been conducting sales for 15 years. He knew how to read a crowd, how to build excitement around valuable merchandise, and how to quickly dispose of those who drew no interest. The morning went as expected. The blacksmith sold for $1,400, a young woman and her infant for $900, 2 adolescent boys together for $1,600. Samuel waited, patient and silent, for prices to drop into his range. Shortly after noon, when the crowd had thinned to about 30 men still hoping for bargains, Gadsden called for number 39 to be brought forward. Samuel would later write in his private journal that something in the auctioneer's voice changed at that moment. A faint note of distaste, something Gadsden usually kept hidden behind his professional calm. The woman who stepped from the back room moved slowly, her head covered by a burlap sack that hung low, draping past her shoulders. 2 attendants guided her carefully up the platform steps, and once she stood, she did not move. She made no sound. "This one requires special consideration," Gadsden announced, his usual theatrical warmth replaced by a clipped, uneasy tone. "She is 24 years of age, strong constitution, no known illnesses. Previous owner acquired her through an estate settlement and requests that we make clear she has been kept isolated due to her appearance. She is capable of field labor or any work requiring no public interaction. Starting bid, $10. The crowd's attention sharpened. Estate settlements usually meant older slaves or those with documented health problems. But isolation due to appearance, that was something unusual. Several men moved closer to the platform. One called out, demanding to see the woman's face. Gadsden hesitated, something Samuel immediately noticed. In all the auctions he had attended, he had never once seen Gadsden pause before displaying his merchandise. "The seller," Gadsden began carefully, "has instructed that her face remain covered until purchase is complete. I am authorized to tell you she sustained severe scarring in a fire during childhood. She is fully functional and retains vision in both eyes. However, her appearance is markedly disfigured. The seller believes this disclosure is sufficient." What happened next became the subject of debate for years among those who were there. Some men immediately turned away, drifting toward the exit, unwilling to buy a person they could not fully inspect. Others lingered, intrigued by the mystery, calculating whether a severely disfigured worker might, in fact, be valuable because she would attract no attention, the kind of worker who caused no plantation complications. A few laughed, making crude jokes about fire damage, questioning whether anyone would bid even $5 for such damaged goods. The bidding faltered. $10, 9, silence. No interest? Gadsden's voice dropped. $8. Surely someone needs a field hand. She is strong, young, will give you years of work. 7, 6. His face flushed. Heat or embarrassment, Samuel couldn't tell. $5, he said finally. Do I have 5? Samuel's hand rose. He would later tell himself it was practicality. $5 for a strong, young worker was an extraordinary bargain, regardless of appearance. Field labor did not require beauty. His overseer could keep her away from the main house, away from his daughters. It was, he reasoned, good business. But in his journal that night, written by candlelight after he had returned to Magnolia Bend, He recorded something different. I bid because the silence felt wrong. Because 30 men stood watching a human being offer for $5 and none of them moved. Because Gadsden looked as though he might vomit. Because I thought of Catherine and how she would have looked at me if I had stood there and done nothing. God forgive me. I bid out of shame, not sense. Sold. To Samuel Rutledge of Magnolia Bend Plantation. Gadsden declared quickly, relief clear in his voice. Papers will be ready within the hour. Next, number 40, male, age 32, experienced Cooper. Samuel barely heard the rest. He moved toward the manager's office to finalize the paperwork, aware of the stares that followed him. A planter named James Huger, a man Samuel knew slightly from church, caught his arms he passed. You have courage or madness, Rutledge. I wouldn't bring something like that onto my land. Some things carry misfortune. Samuel pulled his arm away without responding, but Hugi's words lingered during the long ride back to Carleton County. In the back of the wagon sat the woman, silent, her head still covered by the burlap sack. Samuel hadn't thought to remove it, and she hadn't asked him to. The August heat pressed down like a living weight as the wagon creaked along the rutted road that followed the Edisto River. Spanish moss hung from the live oaks like gray shrouds, barely stirring in the still air. Samuel tried twice to speak to her, asking simple, practical questions. Could she cook? Did she know rice cultivation? Had she worked with indigo before? Each time, her answers were barely whispers, so faint he could hardly hear them over the rumble of the wheels. Yes, sir. No, sir. I don't know, sir. Eventually, he gave up. They rode the rest of the way in silence, broken only by bird calls and the hum of insects rising from the fields. By the time Magnolia Bend came into view, the sun was sinking low toward the western horizon. The two-story house of weathered white plank stood behind 6 tall columns and a broad veranda, surrounded by the buildings that kept the plantation alive. The kitchen house, the smokehouse, storage sheds, stables, and farther back, hidden by a line of cedars, the cabins where the enslaved workers lived. Samuel guided the wagon toward the overseer's quarters, a modest structure near the cabins where William Pryo managed daily operations. Pryo emerged as the wagon stopped, wiping sweat from his neck with a rag. He was 35, broad-shouldered, his face fixed in a permanent expression of appraisal, measuring everything he saw against an internal scale of usefulness. Samuel explained briefly. $5. Field hand. Fire scarring. Put her to work immediately. Whatever task needs another pair of hands. Pryo circled the wagon slowly, examining the new arrival as he would plow a horse, though he made no move to lift the burlap. $5, he repeated. What's wrong with her, besides a face? Disease? Madness? Insubordination? The auctioneer said nothing of the sort, Samuel replied. Young, strong, full vision, simply unmarketable in appearance. And you believe him? Pryo's tone was dry, skeptical. When has Gadsden ever told the whole truth about damaged merchandise? Samuel had no answer. He only told Pryo to assign her work and find her a cabin. Then he drove the wagon to the main house, where his daughters waited on the veranda. Louisa, 17, had her mother's fair complexion and composed posture. Margaret, 14, was darker, more restless, always moving, even when standing still. They both watched their father with unspoken questions, but he offered none of the answers. He only mentioned that he had purchased one new worker to help with the upcoming harvest. That night, Samuel sat in his study, the account books open before him, yet his mind refused to settle on the numbers. The $5 purchase gnawed at him in ways he couldn't explain. He kept seeing the silence in the auction yard, the way grown men had stepped back from the platform as if standing too close to that woman might somehow infect them. And he remembered the burlap sack, still over her head, when Pryo had led her away toward the cabins. He had not asked to see what was underneath. Neither had Pryo. By unspoken agreement, both men had simply chosen not to look. The woman, He realized he didn't even know her name. He hadn't asked. It hadn't been written on the bill of sale. To him, she was still only number 39. She was assigned to the rice fields the following morning. The plantation's main crop required constant, backbreaking attention, flooding and draining the paddies according to precise schedules, cutting weeds, guarding against pests and rot, maintaining the wooden trunks and ditches that controlled the water. It was labor that demanded strength and endurance, performed under a choking humidity and clouds of mosquitoes. But it also kept workers isolated, each person tending a portion of field far from the others. Prio placed number 39 on the easternmost parcel, furthest from the main house and the road. There, she would have minimal contact with anyone. For 3 weeks, nothing unusual occurred. The woman worked in silence, just as the auctioneer had promised. Strong, tireless, obedient. She completed her tasks without complaint or conversation. The others left her alone. Whether out of fear, curiosity, or obedience to Prio's orders, Samuel never knew. He rarely saw her himself, catching only distant glimpses when he rode to the fields on inspection. The burlap sack remained, and Samuel found himself almost grateful not to face whatever was beneath it. Then, on the first Sunday of September, everything changed. Samuel's daughters attended morning service at St. Bartholomew's Church, as they did every week. On the carriage ride home, Margaret complained of a headache and went straight to her room to rest. An hour later, Louisa found her sister on the bedroom floor, convulsing violently, foam at her mouth. Her eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. Samuel sent immediately for Dr. Henry Middleton, the nearest physician, who lived 4 miles away on his own plantation. By the time the doctor arrived, nearly 2 hours later, the seizure had stopped, but Margaret had not woken. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold despite the suffocating heat. Dr. Middleton examined her carefully. Pulse, pupils, color, breathing. He asked about her diet, her recent activities, whether she had shown signs of pain or illness. Samuel told him everything he could remember. Margaret had seemed perfectly normal that morning, perhaps a little quiet, but she'd eaten breakfast, attended church, even laughed at something Louisa had said. Nothing, absolutely nothing, had suggested what came after. I cannot determine the cause, Dr. Middleton admitted at last. Sometimes young women experience these episodes from excitement, stress, or hysteria. But Margaret has always seemed remarkably steady. He left a small bottle of laudanum for the pain and instructions for her care. If she has another seizure, send for me at once, he said quietly. If she does not wake within 12 hours. He didn't finish the sentence. Margaret regained consciousness that evening, confused, weak, with no memory of what happened. She said her headache had grown worse, that light hurt her eyes, and that she couldn't remember simple things. The name of their horse, the color of Louisa's church dress, the hymns they'd sung that morning. Dr. Middleton had warned such symptoms might follow a seizure and recommended rest, darkness, and quiet. But as the days passed, Margaret did not improve. Her headaches intensified, so severe she sometimes could not rise from bed. 2 more seizures followed, each more violent than the last. Her memory fractured. She forgot conversations moments after they happened. She called Louisa by their mother's name. She asked when her father would return from Charleston, while he sat right beside her. Samuel felt a familiar edge of despair, the same helpless dread he'd felt before Catherine's death, when medicine had failed and he'd watched yellow fever take her, one fevered breath at a time. He sent for Dr. Middleton again. The physician examined Margaret and could only shake his head. I am mystified, he confessed. I've seen similar symptoms in patients who suffered head injuries or exposure to certain toxins, but she's had neither. All I can recommend is rest, laudanum, and prayer. But prayer did nothing. By the end of September, Margaret could scarcely leave her bed. Her seizures came more often. Her lucid moments grew shorter. She began to speak of things that hadn't happened, holding conversations with people who'd never visited, describing events that made no sense. Louisa spent hours at her bedside, bathing her face with cool cloths, reading softly from scripture. Samuel watched his younger daughter fade away, consumed by an illness with no name and no cure. And for the first time since Catherine's death, he prayed not out of habit, but with the desperate sincerity of a man who knows prayer is all that's left. It was Louisa who first suggested they ask about traditional remedies. She reminded her father that some of the enslaved workers carried knowledge passed down through generations, herbs, roots, and treatments that white physicians had never been taught. Her mother, Catherine, had once consulted an elderly woman named Rose, now long deceased, whose herbal teas and poultices had helped when conventional medicine failed. Perhaps someone else on the plantation knows the same kind of remedies, Louisa urged. At least we could try. Dr. Middleton himself said he had no answers. Samuel resisted at first. He was a man of reason, of books and science, who subscribed agricultural journals and medical bulletins. Superstition, in his view, was ignorance, something to be corrected, not consulted. But as Margaret worsened, his certainties began to erode. After Louisa raised the subject a third time, he finally relented. He told Prior to ask discreetly among the workers, see if anyone claimed knowledge of healing practices. The overseer returned the next day with an answer Samuel hadn't expected. The woman from the auction, number 39, apparently possessed such knowledge. Samuel learned that the woman, number 39, as she was still called, had once lived with someone who practiced herb doctoring. She might, the overseer said, know something that could help. That evening, Samuel told Priolo to bring her to the main house once the day's field work was finished. The woman arrived at sunset, still draped in the burlap sack that hid her face and shoulders. Samuel met her on the back veranda, away from the windows where Louisa might see. Priolo stood close by, his expression skeptical, as if humoring his master's desperation rather than sharing it. Samuel explained Margaret's condition in detail. The seizures, the confusion, the fading memory, the headaches that never eased. Then he asked, almost pleading, if the woman knew anything that could help. Her reply came in the same quiet voice he'd heard once before on the wagon ride from Charleston. I might know something, sir, she said, if you'd allow me to see the young lady and ask her a few questions. Samuel hesitated. The thought of letting this veiled stranger, whose face he had never seen, whose appearance was said to be disfigured, enter his daughter's room felt wrong in a way he couldn't describe. But Margaret was dying. He knew it now, even if Dr. Middleton hadn't said the words aloud. What use was propriety if it meant losing his child? He led the woman upstairs to Margaret's room, where Louisa sat reading scripture beside the bed. When they entered, Louisa's eyes widened at the sight of the burlap-covered figure standing in the doorway. Samuel explained quickly, this woman may know herbal remedies that could help. I've asked her to examine Margaret. We must try everything. Louisa's face showed doubt, but also hope, that fragile, desperate hope born from watching someone you love fade despite every prayer and treatment. The woman approached Margaret's bed slowly, as though not to startle her. Margaret's eyes were closed, her skin pale and damp with sweat. Kneeling beside her, the woman touched her forehead, her dark hand against the girl's white skin, and spoke softly. Miss Margaret, can you hear me? Can you tell me when the pain began? When you first started to feel unwell? Margaret stirred, her eyelids fluttering. Mother, she whispered faintly. Mother, my head hurts so much. When can we go home? Soon, the woman murmured gently. Soon, child. But first, I need to know some things. Do you remember what you ate before the headaches began? Did you touch anything that made your skin tingle or smell anything strange? Her questions came patiently, one after another, as Margaret drifted in and out of awareness. Samuel stood watching, struck by the sound of the woman's voice. It carried the same warmth and calm strength Catherine once used when comforting their daughters, steady, soothing, kind. He realized then he had expected someone broken, strange, perhaps slow-minded. But this woman's manner revealed intelligence, experience, a quiet authority that did not fit with her $5 price or the sack that hit her face. After several minutes, the woman rose and asked to speak privately. They stepped back out to the veranda, where the last light of day was sinking into the western sky. Priolo had gone, likely back to his supper. Samuel waited, studying her hands as she spoke. Smooth, unscarred, elegant. If fire had truly ruined her face, why had her hands escaped untouched? "Sir," the woman began, her voice firmer now, "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth, because your daughter's life may depend on it. Has Miss Margaret been given anything special to eat or drink lately? Any gifts of food or medicine from outside this house?" Samuel thought carefully. "No," he said. "Everything she's eaten has come from our own kitchen, prepared by our cook. She's been with us for years. Dr. Middleton left laudanum, but that's common treatment. Why do you ask?" The woman was silent for a long moment. Samuel had the strange feeling she was deciding how much truth to share. When she spoke, her tone was deliberate. "The symptoms Miss Margaret shows, the seizures, the memory loss, the confusion, the weakness, they match a certain kind of poisoning. Not food poisoning, something slower, a toxin that builds up in the body little by little. There are plants that can do this, and there are people who know how to use them." Her words hung heavy in the humid air. Poisoning, the deliberate harming of his child. It sounded impossible. Margaret was only 14, gentle, kind, beloved by everyone. Who would wish her harm? And yet, the explanation fit. The illness had appeared suddenly and worsened steadily, with no natural rhythm of recovery or relapse. Everything had changed that first Sunday of September. Samuel's voice trembled. "If you are right," he said, "then someone in my own household is trying to kill my daughter. Is that what you mean?" "I am saying it's possible, sir," she answered. "I cannot be certain, not yet, but I've seen this before, and it was caused by a plant called white snake root. It grows wild in the shade. Used carefully, it can poison slowly. Eventually, it kills. And most doctors never suspect it because the symptoms mimic other sicknesses." Samuel felt the night air turn cold against his skin. "Can you help her?" he asked. "If she's been poisoned, can you save her?" "If the poisoning stops now, yes," the woman said. "Her body can heal itself if no more toxin is given. But, sir, you must find who is doing this, because if I am right, they will try again." Samuel looked at her, bewildered. "How do you know all this? About poisons and plants and sickness?" The woman stiffened slightly, a shadow crossing her voice. "I was taught," she said quietly, "by someone who understood healing and harm. Someone who knew both could come from the same hands. The plants that heal," the woman said quietly, "can also kill, depending on the dose and the intent. I do not practice poisoning, but I know how to recognize it when I see it." They spoke for another 10 minutes, the woman explaining what must be done. "All of Margaret's food," she said, "should be prepared only by someone Samuel trusted completely and served the girl directly, with no chance for anyone else to touch or add to it. The laudanum should be stopped immediately. Fresh water should be given to her often to help flush the poison from her body. Someone must watch her room at all times, allowing no visitors except family. If these precautions are followed," she said, "your daughter should begin to improve within a few days. If she does not, then I am wrong, and something else is at work." Samuel took her words to heart. That very night, he gave strict orders. Their cook, Patience, was to prepare every one of Margaret's meals personally and bring them straight to her room. He told Louisa what the woman had said about poison. He watched as his elder daughter's face turned pale, shocked, and horror. He instructed Priolo to keep an eye out for anyone from the quarters or fields who might be approaching the main house at strange hours. And Samuel himself sat in Margaret's room that night, unwilling to sleep while his daughter's life still hung by a thread. By the third day, there was a change. Margaret's condition stabilized. The seizures stopped. The relentless headaches began to fade. Her memory remained patchy and confused, but she seemed more alert, more aware. Dr. Middleton returned to examine her, astonished at the improvement. He called it a blessing of rest and prayer. Samuel said nothing of poison, nothing of the veiled woman who had diagnosed it. He simply nodded, thanked the doctor, and sent him on his way. By the end of the week, Margaret was sitting up in bed, asking for books. By the second week, she was walking around her room, frail, but recovering. The transformation was extraordinary, almost miraculous. And Samuel knew, with absolute certainty, that the woman had been right. Someone had been poisoning his daughter. Someone inside his household. Someone who had stopped only because the opportunity had been taken away. That night, he summoned Priolo to his study and told him everything. The overseer's face darkened as he listened. "You're saying someone tried to murder Miss Margaret," he said slowly. "And you want to find out who?" "I'm saying we need to know the truth," Samuel replied. "Start with everyone who's been inside the main house in the past 2 months. Kitchen staff, house servants, delivery men. I want to know if anyone's been acting strangely, asking odd questions, or showing interest in Margaret's activities." The investigation took 3 days. Priolo questioned everyone methodically, and Samuel listened for inconsistencies in their stories. Slowly, a pattern began to form, one that chilled him to his core. Several servants mentioned that Louisa had been preparing special teas for her sister, herbal mixtures, she claimed, to help with Margaret's headaches and anxiety. The housekeeper, Ruth, who had served the family since before the girls were born, remembered Louisa asking about certain wild plants that grew in the woods near the plantation. Plants with white flowers and a distinctive, almost sweet smell. Plants that Ruth now realized matched the description of white snakeroot, the very poison the veiled woman had spoken of. Louisa, his own daughter. The thought was monstrous, unthinkable, and yet, when Samuel forced himself to reason through it with the cold logic he used in business, certain facts fell into place with horrifying clarity. Louisa was 17, at an age when she should have already been married, but their declining finances had limited her prospects. The wealthier families had daughters of their own to marry off advantageously, and the families of their own social level could not offer Louisa the life she had grown up expecting. Margaret, younger and far more vivacious, had already begun to draw the attention of potential suitors, even at 14. If she married well, it might hurt Louisa's chances entirely. Plantation families often struggled to provide a substantial dowry for one daughter, let alone 2. Still, could Louisa truly have gone so far? To poison her own sister out of jealousy or desperation? The idea seemed unbearable, and yet the evidence pointed squarely in one direction. That evening, after Margaret had gone to bed, Samuel confronted Louisa in the parlor. He asked her directly about the teas she had been making. Louisa's face drained of color, then flushed red. She began to cry, but not with guilt. These were tears of outrage. "You believe that creature over your own daughter?" she shouted. "That woman you brought into our home, who hides her face like a monster. She's poisoned your mind, Father, not Margaret's body." "Answer the question, Louisa," Samuel said, his voice tight. "What was in the teas you gave your sister?" "Herb for headaches," she snapped. "Chamomile, mint, feverfew, the same things Mother used to use. I was trying to help her, since that useless Dr. Middleton does nothing but take your money and leave laudanum behind." "Ruth says you asked about plants with white flowers, white snakeroot," Samuel said. "Why would you ask about that?" Louisa looked genuinely confused. "I never asked about white snakeroot. I don't even know what that is. I asked Ruth about white vervain. Mother said it was good for nerves." Ruth must have misunderstood. The argument dragged on for nearly an hour. Accusation and denial, love and disbelief clashing until both were exhausted. Samuel wanted desperately to believe her, but logic left little room for faith. Louisa had the opportunity. She had a possible motive. She had been preparing drinks for her sister. She had asked about the very plants described in the warning. And Margaret's illness had begun shortly after those teas appeared. The facts were merciless. The heart refused to accept them. After that night, the house fell into uneasy silence, a kind of emotional Cold War. Louisa stopped speaking to her father, except when absolutely necessary. She stopped making anything for Margaret, stopped sitting at her bedside, and withdrew into a proud, wounded silence. Samuel lived torn between his daughters, unable to trust his suspicions, unable to trust Louisa's denials. The woman from the auction, the one who had saved Margaret's life, remained in the fields, silent as ever, never asking what had become of the girl she'd helped. 3 weeks after Margaret's recovery began, something happened that Samuel would later recognize as the first warning of far stranger events yet to come. He received a visitor, unexpected, unannounced. James Huger, the Charleston planter who had once warned him about misfortune at the auction, arrived alone one hot afternoon, claiming he was merely passing through on his way to Savannah, a business meeting in Walterboro. But Magnolia Bend wasn't on the way to Walterboro, and Huger's manner suggested there was another reason for his visit. They sat together on the front veranda, sipping tea that Patience had prepared, exchanging polite small talk for nearly 15 minutes before Huger finally revealed the true purpose of his call. "Rutledge," he began cautiously, "I've been hearing things, rumors, probably nothing more than idle gossip, but they concern you and your household. I thought you should know." Samuel's brow furrowed. "What kind of rumors?" "About the woman you purchased at Ryan's Mart, the $5 woman." Huger hesitated, then continued, lowering his voice. "People are saying she has unusual abilities, that she cured your daughter of an illness that defeated Dr. Middleton, that she knew things she shouldn't have been able to know." Samuel's jaw tightened. "My daughter's recovery is due to proper care and God's mercy. Nothing more." "Of course," Huger agreed quickly. "Of course. But Rutledge, you must understand how these stories spread, how they grow. Some are saying she's a conjure woman, that she practices African magic, that she can see things hidden from ordinary eyes. And once those stories take hold, they attract attention. Dangerous attention." "What kind of attention?" Samuel asked quietly. Huger shifted in his chair, clearly uneasy. "There are men, planners, merchants, even professionals, who seek out people with certain talents, things beyond regular medicine or polite society. They pay well for those talents, and they will come looking for your $5 woman, if they haven't already." Samuel studied Huger's face, searching for what lay beneath the words. "Are you one of those men, Huger? Is that why you're here?" A flicker of emotion, offense perhaps, or recognition, crossed Huger's features. "I came to warn you, Rutledge. You may have bought something far more valuable and far more dangerous than you realize. That woman, whatever she is, whatever she knows, will bring attention to Magnolia Bend, and not all of it will be welcome." Just when it seemed the horror had ended, the darkness surrounding Magnolia Bend only deepened. If this story is giving you chills, share it with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of this chilling saga. Let's uncover together what happens next. After Huger left, Samuel called for Prio and told him everything. The overseer's reaction was instant and grim. "I told you $5 is too cheap. Women like that bring trouble. You should sell her before worse happens." "Sell her?" Samuel repeated, incredulous. "She saved Margaret's life." "Maybe," Prio said flatly, "or maybe your daughter would have recovered anyway. You're thinking with gratitude, not sense. Hope makes men blind." Samuel couldn't entirely dismiss his overseer's words, but the thought of selling someone who had saved his child's life felt like betrayal. "She stays," he said finally, "but keep her in the fields, away from the main house. And if anyone comes asking about her, anyone, tell me immediately." That night, Samuel returned to his study and tried to lose himself in ledgers and accounts, but his mind kept drifting. Something in his orderly, rational world had shifted, subtly but unmistakably, and he could feel it slipping beyond his control. In the weeks that followed, Ugliest's warning began to come true. Strangers started appearing at Magnolia Bend, men with polite smiles and harmless excuses. They claimed to be merchants, buyers, or travelers seeking directions. But sooner or later, each of them mentioned her, the woman from the auction. Was Samuel satisfied with his purchase? They would ask, had she shown any unusual skill? Would he consider selling her, perhaps for a generous profit? Samuel refused them all, but the offers kept coming. A merchant from Jacksonboro offered $200, 40 times what Samuel had paid. A planter from St. Stephen's Parish offered $500. A Charleston gentleman, a man of wealth and reputation, offered $1,000, saying he needed a healer for his sick wife. Each refusal only raised the next offer, and Samuel began to wonder uneasily what would happen when the offer stopped. What would these men used to getting what they wanted, do when polite negotiation failed? At the same time, something else was unfolding, something Samuel only recognized much later. The woman from the auction, the one who still had no name, who still wore the burlap covering, who still worked quietly in the fields, was changing Magnolia Bend itself. Workers who had once been sullen became cooperative. Tasks once done carelessly were now handled with care. The overseer reported fewer fights, fewer punishments, fewer problems. It was as if some invisible tension that had haunted the plantation for years had begun to dissolve. Pryor dismissed it as coincidence, or perhaps the result of stricter discipline. Samuel tried to believe that, too, but deep down, he couldn't ignore that the change had started when she arrived. He thought of Ugliest's words, unusual abilities. What if her knowledge wasn't limited to herbs and poisons? What if she understood something deeper, something about people, about harmony and discord, about power itself? Maybe that was why she had been kept apart before the auction. Maybe the burlap covering wasn't meant to hide her deformity, but to protect others from something far more disturbing. The questions gnawed at Samuel's sleep. He began drinking more, bourbon after dinner, then bourbon before dinner, tried to drown the unease that had taken root in his mind. His relationship with Louisa remained cold. She had never forgiven his suspicions, though he had never outright accused her of harming Margaret. His younger daughter, recovered but changed, moved through the house quietly, watchful and distant. What had once been a home now felt like a stage, every gesture measured, every silent heavy. Mistake. I trusted the wrong man. Adah's voice trembled for the first time. He pretended to be a friend, said he would help me find work. Instead, he betrayed me, sold me to a trader in Savannah. The trader couldn't decide what to do with me. My face changed from day to day, and he thought I was cursed or mad, or both. Eventually, I was sold again at Ryan's Mart for $5. A curiosity no one wanted to touch. Until you. Samuel listened in stunned silence, his mind wrestling with reason. Everything Adah said sounded impossible, and yet everything he had seen since she arrived whispered that it was true. You could have left before, he said finally. Why stay? Why save my daughter? Because she was innocent, Adah said simply, and because I owed a debt to no one until that moment. I saw what was happening to her, and I could stop it, so I did. I am not a monster, Mr. Rutledge. I am only what the world makes of me. Samuel poured another glass of bourbon, but did not drink it. His hands were shaking. If what you say is true, then your ability, your gift, could be used for great good. You could help people, expose liars, prevent wars. Adah's eyes hardened. And that is exactly what every man before you said. Help me, serve me, work for me. No one ever offers freedom. They offer ownership dressed as opportunity. I've lived that before. I won't live it again. Samuel fell silent. Outside, the wind scraped against the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet. After a long moment, Samuel asked softly, And if I give you what you asked for, the papers, the money, what happens then? I leave tonight, Adah said. You will never see me again, and your household will be safe from a man who come asking and from me. Samuel stared at her. Every instinct screamed not to trust her, and yet, in that instant, he believed her more than he believed his own fear. He saw again the shift in her face, the way reality seemed to waver around her, as if truth itself bent to her will. He stood, went to his desk, and took out a blank sheet of paper. His hand trembled as he signed his name at the bottom. You'll have your freedom, he said quietly, and $50 for the road. Adah rose. Thank you. Before she turned to leave, Samuel asked, one more question. Why did Louisa scream when she saw you? Why did she call you a monster? Adah's eyes flickered with sadness. Because she saw what she feared most. And in that moment, I saw it too. She walked out of the study without another word. Samuel sat there for a long time, staring at the document still wet with ink, the bourbon untouched at his elbow. He heard the front door open, then close. The night swallowed the sound of footsteps receding down the drive. When he finally rose and went upstairs, Louisa was sitting in the parlor, trembling, her eyes red from crying. Margaret stood beside her, silent and pale. Neither spoke when he entered. She's gone, Samuel said. Louisa looked up sharply. Gone? You let her go? Father, she's dangerous. Enough, he said, more sharply than he intended. She asked for her freedom, and I gave it. This matter is finished. But it wasn't finished. Not really, because the next morning, when Pryor went out to fields, he found the workers standing in uneasy silence. The tools were abandoned. The air felt heavier somehow. The light strange and dim even under the clear sky. And near the edge of the property, where the road disappeared into the swamp, the earth was marked with footprints, a woman's footprints, that led away from Magnolia Bend. Then, halfway down the path, they simply stopped, vanished. No trace beyond that point. And from that day forward, nothing at Magnolia Bend was ever quite the same again. Was quieter after her departure, though the silence carried a strange weight. The workers went about their routines. The fields thrived as they always had, and yet something unspoken lingered, as though the air itself remembered her presence. Samuel found himself thinking of Adah often. Sometimes, late at night, he would hear the echo of her voice in the stillness of his study. Not the words themselves, but their gravity, the way they had unsettled him. He would picture her riding north through the marshes, her shawl pulled tight against the wind, the manumission papers tucked close to her heart. He wondered if she ever reached safety, if there truly was a place in the world where someone like her could live free from chains, both real and imagined. Louisa's anger never truly faded. Even after her marriage to the Georgetown merchant, she carried a sharp bitterness, an unspoken resentment that poisoned every tender moment. Her eyes, once bright with ambition, became cold mirrors of regret. Margaret, gentle and quiet, grew more reserved with each passing year. Though her health returned, her laughter did not. She kept to her books, to the gardens, and to the chapel, where she often prayed alone long after the others had gone. Sometimes, Samuel would find her standing near the edge of the swamp, staring into the distance as if expecting someone to return. When he asked what she was looking for, she always answered the same. Nothing, Father, just the wind. Samuel aged quickly after Adah's departure. Perhaps it was the guilt or the realization that his plantation, his legacy, had been built upon illusions. He began freeing more of his workers quietly, selling off parcels of land, reducing the estate to a shadow of what it once was. The neighbors whispered that he'd gone soft, that the strange woman had cursed him before she left. He ignored them. But every so often, travelers passing through Magnolia Bend spoke of a woman matching Adah's description, sometimes seen near Charleston, sometimes farther north, always alone. Some said she could read a man's heart by looking into his eyes. Others claimed she was a healer who appeared in town struck by fever and disappeared before dawn. No two stories were ever the same. Years later, when Samuel lay on his deathbed, Margaret sat beside him. The plantation was quiet again, overgrown, forgotten by most. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he whispered one final question. "Do you think she was real?" Margaret took his hand and said softly, "She was real, Father, and she was more human than most of us ever were." After Samuel's death, Magnolia Bend was abandoned. The house slowly surrendered to vines and silence, its grand columns cracked and leaning, its windows hollow and dark. But those who passed by at night, travelers, lost wanderers, even the occasional scavenger, sometimes reported seeing a faint figure on the porch. A woman, they said, with shifting features and eyes that seemed to hold every truth a person wished to forget. Some claimed she was the ghost of a slave who never found peace. Others said she was still alive, unchanged by time, moving from place to place, showing people what they refused to see. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: Magnolia Bend remembered her. And in the whisper of the wind through the cypress trees, in the soft rustle of leaves beneath the moonlight, it was said you could still hear her voice. "I am not a monster. I am only what the world makes of me." Continued its operations for nearly another decade before Samuel finally sold the plantation and relocated to Charleston to be closer to Margaret, the daughter who had forgiven him, even if she never fully understood him. By then, Margaret had married a lawyer and given him 3 grandchildren, filling her father's final years with a quiet sense of redemption. Louisa, however, lived a different story. She remained in Georgetown until 1863, when Union forces occupied the town, and her merchant husband fled to England to avoid capture and confiscation. Alone and disillusioned, she returned briefly to Charleston during the war's final year, staying with Samuel for 3 uneasy months. During that time, she and Margaret maintained only a fragile, brittle politeness that broke Samuel's heart. They spoke of the weather, the children, and the war, never the past. Louisa died in 1867, taken by influenza just as her mother had been years before. Samuel arranged her burial in the family plot at St. Bartholomew's, beside Catherine, marking the grave with a simple inscription, "Beloved Daughter." He did not add "forgiven," though he thought it every day until his death. The records of what happened at Magnolia Bend during 1847 and 1848 were eventually scattered across archives and attics. Plantation ledgers here, court documents there, and private letters tucked away in family trunks that would not be opened for generations. The story of the $5 woman, fragmented over time, reshaped by gossip and retelling, until truth blurred into myth. Some descendants of the Rutledge family deny she ever existed. Others insist she was a fabrication, a piece of abolitionist propaganda, designed to smear the Southern way of life. Official records offer little clarity. Pages are missing from auction logs, county registries show unexplained gaps, and several key witnesses simply vanish from historical trace. But in 1902, a journalist researching unusual property disputes in South Carolina stumbled upon a remarkable discovery: Samuel Rutledge's manumission papers for a woman named Adah Freeman, filed among a collection of unrelated legal documents donated to the Charleston Library Society. The papers identified her birthplace as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and bore Samuel's own unsteady signature. Intrigued, the journalist tried to trace her movements after 1848. Though no definitive trail emerged, scattered clues hinted at a larger story. An entry in Underground Railroad records from 1849 mentioned a woman matching her description, helping enslaved families cross into freedom in the North. A hospital report from Philadelphia in 1852 listed an Adah Freeman among volunteer nurses during a cholera outbreak. And then there was a letter written in 1871 by a Quaker schoolteacher in Ohio, describing a woman named Adah who ran a small school for freed slaves. The teacher wrote that Adah had an extraordinary gift for helping her students believe in their own worth, no matter how broken the world tried to make them. Whether these fragments all describe the same woman, or whether Adah Freeman disappeared into vast American wilderness, when a countless souls erased by time, remains uncertain. No historian has ever been able to confirm the truth. What to survive, however, is one final entry from Samuel Rutledge's personal journal, written the night he granted Adah her freedom. The ink runs unevenly, the handwriting shaky, the mark of bourbon and heartbreak combined. Tonight, I released a woman I purchased for $5. I do not know if she was what she claimed to be, or if I merely saw what she wished me to see. I do not know whether she possessed powers beyond human understanding, or simply the strength and intelligence to survive what should have destroyed her. What I know is this: she saved one daughter's life and revealed the darkness in another's heart. She forced me to look into a mirror I had avoided all my life. Whether that makes her saint, demon, or something entirely human, I cannot say. Only this I am certain of: after she left, the world seemed dimmer. Something bright, something true had gone out of it. God forgive me if I made the wrong choice. God help me if I made the right one. And so ends the story of Adah Freeman, the $5 woman. A mystery that blurs the line between truth and legend, between the supernatural and the deeply human. It reminds us that the most haunting elements of history often lie not in what we cannot explain, but in what we refuse to face. The capacity for cruelty, compassion, and transformation that exists within every human heart. So what do you think? Was Adah Freeman truly gifted, able to shape perception itself? Or was she simply a brilliant survivor who understood human nature better than anyone around her? Did Louisa really poison her sister? Or could there be another, more complicated truth hidden beneath guilt and fear? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, a tale where history meets horror and reality bends into legend, subscribe to Litany of Fear. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And share this video with someone who loves mysteries that live in the shadows of the past. The past is filled with secrets demanding to be told, and we'll keep uncovering them, one dark truth at a time.